Hi, third graders. We're back on a Monday. So that means it's time for another quick lesson, and then we can do our chapter books. I'm so excited to be talking to you guys again. I'm here in South Carolina, and I'm missing you all so much. Today, we are going to be talking about sentence creation and making really interesting and complete sentences. So we have to start with something basic, and then we're going to add from there using all the different parts of speech that we've been working on all year. So I have a really simple sentence. The snake moved. I already have a subject and a predicate. The subject is the snake, and the predicate, so what the subject does, is moved in this sentence. So the snake moved. While it is a complete sentence, it's not very interesting, and there's a lot more that we can add to it. So we already have a noun, the snake, but we don't know where the snake is, what's the snake moving, how is the snake moving it. We don't have any sort of description. So let's go through and add those together, and you guys are going to be doing this similarly on your worksheet, okay? So we need to add different things to this sentence. So first of all, let's add an adverb because we've been working so hard on those. So how is the snake going to move? A really quick way to add an adverb, we know a lot of them end in ly. So the snake could move silently. So the snake moved silently. Okay, but then where does it move to? Where do snakes sometimes move to? They can move under the rock. So the snake moved silently under the rock. Ooh, we're getting more interesting now. But I want to add some description to add some flavor to our sentence. So, how could we describe the snake? So, the long, slippery snake moved silently under the rock. Now, I have made my sentence way more interesting than where we started. But what could we do that would help even more? We could change our verb, move, to a different verb that would be a little bit more interesting and different. Now, what could we do? We could say slithered, because snakes slither. So that would make our sentence the long, slippery snake slithered silently under the rock. Do you see how we took the sentence, the snake moved, and we've changed it into a whole new thing that makes it a lot more interesting for our audience? So now you guys are going to work on worksheet 7.2, following these same steps, breaking apart the sentence that's given to you, and then adding a lot more to it using all of our skills, our adverbs, our adjectives, nouns, and you're adding to each sentence. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So, ready, set, pause your video so you can do your worksheet. Okay, so now we have to do our chapter book read alouds. Let's start with the one and only Ivan. Ivan's made a lot of promises. We got to see if he can keep up with them, right? He said he would get Ruby to a zoo. Going nowhere. I watch Ruby plod around the ring in endless circles, going nowhere. More visitors have been coming, but not many. Max says Ruby's not picking up the slack after all. He says he's cutting back on our food. He says he's turning off the heat at night to save money. Ruby looks thinner to me, more wrinkled than Stella ever was. Do you think Ruby's eating enough? I ask Bob. I don't know. I'll tell you one thing, though. You're sure as heck painting enough. Bob wrinkles his nose. That stench is unbelievable, and I found yellow paint in my tail yesterday. Bob is not happy about my night painting. He says it's unnatural. Now, while I work on my art, Bob sleeps with his stuffed animal. He claims he prefers her because she does not snore. He says her belly doesn't rise and fall and make him seasick. What is this plan of yours anyways? Bob asks. If you explained it to me, I could help out. He gnaws at his tail. Maybe if I could come up with something that doesn't involve paint. I can't explain it, I tell him. It's an idea in my head, but I can't get it right. And, anyways, I'm almost out of the supplies. I should have known I wouldn't have enough. I kick my tire swing. It's spattered with drops of blue paint. It's a stupid idea. I doubt that, Bob says. Smelly? Yes. Stupid? Never. Bad guys. Most days I doze. Late in the afternoon, Mac approaches. Bob slips under his stuffed animal. He prefers to keep a low profile around Mac. Mac's gaze falls onto my pool. A corner of one of my paintings is visible. "What's that, big guy?" he asks. I calmly eat an orange, ignoring him, but my heart is racing. Mac kicks at my plastic pool. Underneath it are all the paintings. Mac yanks out a piece of paper. It slips out easily, and he doesn't seem to notice the other paintings. The page is striped with green, which is what happens when blue paint and yellow paint mix together. It's supposed to be a patch of grass. Not bad. Where'd you get the paint anyway? George's kid? He considers. I'll bet I can get 30 for this picture, maybe even 40. Mac turns on my TV. It's a Western. There's a human with a big hat and a small gun. He's got a shiny star pinned to his chest. That means he is the sheriff, and he will be getting rid of the bad guys. "If this sells quick, I'm going to get you some more of that paint, buddy," Mac says. He walks away with my painting. Ruby's painting. For a moment, I imagine what it would feel like to be a sheriff. Let's read a little bit more. "Good news, huh?" Bob says when Mac's out of earshot. "Looks like you're going to be getting some painting supplies." "I don't want to paint for Mac," I say. "I'm painting for Ruby." "You can do both. You are an artist, after all." While I watch the movie, I try to come up with a new hiding place for my paintings. Maybe, I think, I could fold them, and once they're dry, I could stuff them into the stuffed animal. It's been a long time since I've seen a Western movie that is also a romance. I stick my tongue out. "I liked that movie," I say to Bob. "Too many horses, not enough dogs," he comments, and the ads come on. I don't understand ads. They're not like Westerns where you know who the bad guy is supposed to be, and they're hardly ever romantic unless the man and the woman are brushing their teeth before they face slick. I watch an ad for underarm deodorant. "How do you know who's who if they don't smell?" I ask Bob. "Humans reek," Bob replies. "They just don't notice because they have incompetent noses." Another ad comes on. I see children and their parents buying tickets, just like the ones that Max sells. They laugh, enjoying their ice cream cones as they walk down a path. They pause to watch two sleepy-eyed cats, huge and striped, dozing in long grass. Tigers, I know, because I saw them on a nature show once. Words flash on the screen, accompanied by a drawing of a red giraffe. The giraffe vanishes, and I see a human family staring at another kind of family. Elephants, old and young. They're surrounded by rocks and trees and grass and room to move around. It's a wild cage, a zoo. I see where it begins and where it ends, the wall that says you are this and we are that, and this is how it should always be. It's not a perfect place. Even in just a few fleeting seconds on my TV screen, I can see that. A perfect place would not need any walls, but it's the place I need. I gaze at the elephants and then look over at Ruby, small and alone. Before the ad ends, I try to remember every last detail. Rocks, trees, tails, trunks. It's the picture that I need to paint. So Mac found one of his paintings, but that might be a good thing because he might get more painting supplies. But now he's seen an advertisement for a zoo. What I think is really interesting is that he already sees problems also with a zoo. Why do you think that Ivan sees a problem with a zoo? What does a zoo still have that he wouldn't have if they lived in the wild? And This is starting to bring up those points that we keep coming back to throughout this whole story about, does this change our opinion of zoos? Does this change how we think animals should be treated? What do you think the author wants us to feel when we're reading this? Okay, 209, that's it for you today. 111, you're up. Let's see what Marigold's up to now. For the next couple of days, Marigold buzzed around the castle, staying out of Olympia's way and doing all she could to drum up support for the rebellion. It pleased her to know how fond the populace was of Swithbert and how opposed most of them were to living under Olympia's iron-fisted rule. But she was also dismayed to see how the emotional tide was turning against Swithbert because of his failure to control the queen. If Swithbert didn't take a stand, he would be deposed along with Olympia. Someone else the people liked better, maybe even Magnus, the king's closest direct relative, not already ruling somewhere else, would inherit the kingdom of Beauregard. Marigold vowed that she would remove her own liver with a rusty fork before she would scare her father with that news. Lazy Susan, too, was spreading the word about a possible solution to the kingdom's discontent, and meeting a good many new people in the process. In Granola, she'd known everybody and was used to them, that she barely paid any attention to anyone else. Now she was making so many new acquaintances, it made her feel all zippy with energy and curiosity. Something she hadn't known could be so much fun. She bumped into Mr. Lucasa on the stairs one afternoon. He was carrying a basket full of garments for Olympia, as well as a honey tart with a fancy crust that he'd made. And she was carrying a basket full of beautiful fresh flowers from the gardens. Mrs. Clover had given her time off from the dirty pots as a reward for her work well done, and she'd been assigned to distribute bouquets to the third-floor bedrooms. So hard work did have its rewards. "Hello," she said. "I haven't seen you for days. What have you been doing?" Sewing, pinning, sewing some more, cooking, making cakes, trudging up and down stairs to run errands for an unreasonable woman, not getting much sleep at all. How about you? Scrubbing, 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 and also not getting very much sleep. Whoever said working in a castle was a good thing? I'm sure almost anybody said it, Mr. Lucasa said, but most people need jobs, and the castle's where the jobs are. Would you say this castle is a good place to work? I've never worked in any other, so I can't really say, but all in all, I think I prefer working for myself. There is a lot of satisfaction in making things for other people to enjoy. But my primary customer here is somebody who's almost impossible to please, and there's not much satisfaction in that. I almost want to call her names sometimes, but I'm having to keep my temper under control. Anger hardly ever solves a problem, I've learned. But how about a rebellion? Can't that sometimes solve a problem too? What do you mean? A rebellion against the queen? She nodded a tiny nod. You've just got here, he said, surprised, and you're already getting involved in such a thing? It doesn't take long to see how she operates. You already want to put your fist in her face. Think about how people who've been working here for a long time must feel. Mr. Lucasa rubbed his chin. He'd been so busy he hadn't had time to shave, and he'd begun growing a small white beard, which Lazy Susan thought was rather becoming on him. You probably have a point. I've heard certain mutterings among the cooks and the bakers, and I was told that Mrs. Vienna replaced a seamstress who got exiled because she left a pin in one of the queen's dresses and it poked her one time. That punishment seems a bit drastic for the crime, in my opinion. All of her punishments are drastic. So then why don't you just go home? I've thought about it, Lazy Susan said, and I could. But now that I've seen how she reigns, I've wondered how the people I've met are doing, and it would keep me awake at night. I might as well stay and help fix their situation if I can. What about you? He looked at her in a brand new way. Since he'd come to the castle, he'd heard of her reputation, her laziness, her jealousness of her half sister. But the person he was talking to now was full of fire and admiration. And if she was going to be involved in any sort of revolution, he wanted in on it too. I know what you mean, he said, and I don't want to leave either until I see if I can help. What should I do? Just try to get more people involved and let me know if you find anyone who's on the Queen's side so we can figure out a way to neutralize them before the actual rebellion begins. Neutralize? He didn't like the sound of that. I just mean get them out of here. Lock them up someplace so they can't interfere, or maybe change their minds. Afterwards, we can determine whether to exile them or give them another chance or whatever. I don't get to decide that. I'm not the one who's in charge here. Who is then? Who's leading this rebellion? Lazy Susan scratched her head. To tell you the truth, I don't actually know. I heard it from another maid in the scullery. Her name's Mary. But I don't know if she could be the leader. She's just a scullery maid, and you should see how dirty she is. I'd feel better if I knew who the leader was. We don't want to walk into a trap. Maybe the Queen's trying to find out who in the castle opposes her in order to get rid of them. Maybe this Mary is a spy. So that's the end of our chapter for today. First of all, Mr. Lucassum asks some very good questions. He wants to know why Lazy Susan has changed so much. He wants to know why she wants to be part of this rebellion. But he also wants to know who's leading it. Because this whole time, they still have no idea that it's Queen Marigold. And then we still haven't heard from Christian about what he's doing. There are still so many unanswered questions, so I guess we'll have to come back tomorrow for another part of both of our books. Third graders, that's the end of my video for today. I hope you guys are all staying inside, staying safe, staying healthy. Remember to be kind and share. I know this is a hard time to be stuck in a house together, but we can all do our part. Get your work done, please, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.